Is it going? There we go. Okay.
So,
Um, the questions that I was gonna ask you were were two questions, and I don't know if they're related or not, but I was reading this book again, the mindfulness Buddhadasa book. I don't know if you can see it.
oh, a mindful. Okay, that's a new edition. Yes, I know
Yeah,
the book, the thin book done by at a retreat, 1988, Santa Clara. Yes.
yeah, I love it because it's super like very proud, like really one by one, breaking it down. Um, and I love it because it's I read it once, but I didn't really I kind of read it. I didn't really like read it. Um, uh, there's one question first that is maybe related. The second question has to do with the book. The first question is about because in my practice, um, the number one thing that has caused me the most trouble um, is so funny. I mean, it's funny because you already the laughter shows that there's something underneath, the restless or something, because it really is like one of them. Like when you go down to it, I can't really say that I've had a lot of suffering in my life. Most of it has come from just my mind, not from like the outside physical. Um,
Such is the state of humanity.
yeah, it really is. Because even the physical is a manifestation of like that inner turmoil. And a lot of it has had to do with lust or sex or even having sexuality as a thing existing in me is like a wrong thing. And like a lot of that, like when I see a girl or I see some attractive something, it doesn't matter what it is, because automatically it's always filled with intense, not fear. I used to be able not to talk to people. Like I couldn't look up at them. I couldn't look up at their eyes. Yeah, because I was
Okay.
always scared. I was always just really, like that's just a habit that you form unknowingly. And it's just hard because like when it pushes um like in my belly, like it's just like a fear, basically, an intense fear.
It's not like a fear, it is fear.
Yeah, it really is. It's super painful. Like it really hurts. And
Well,
sometimes it
let us say that instead of using that language, let's start using or start to use a new language.
Yeah.
And that new language is I don't like it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have stories to show you. Like I have an example just recently of this in my life is I was with this girl that I just, I'm with her. Like I work with her, so it's like I have no choice. So I'm kind of in that situation battling my own mind because it's not her. She's not doing anything. It's just my mind and my kind of, or whatever it is, the body. And when the last time I just really couldn't deal with it, like of course I could deal with it. I wasn't like going nuts or I could talk to her, but inside it was just crying like, you can do this. Don't worry. Don't. No, wait, it's there. Get away from me. I don't want. No, I can deal with this. Breathe. Relax. Like just a forceful kind of like, as it's getting smaller, the more you say no to it, the worse it becomes. And it becomes like a sweat, a cramp. It can manifest as a cramp or as sweating. It depends on how bad it can get. Uh, Sometimes it gets so bad that it can turn into borderline like anxiety or like things like that.
Not borderline, it is anxiety.
Yeah, it just is. It just is that really. And sometimes it's really the most powerful one of the hindrance, or I think that would be a hindrance. And um, because I can't see through it once, like unless I don't really practice beforehand and really keep sustaining, it
Mhm.
will it will like take over my life. Like if I wasn't a Buddhist, I'd probably be somewhere really horrible right now. But like in that sense, and that's how it's not who I am anymore. I don't see it as myself because I used to think I have to get rid of this. This is who I am. Like I'm a horrible human for having any type of feeling. So it's kind of
Well, I'm
like,
glad to hear that you're
yeah,
coming out of that.
yeah, like I told you, the porn and the addiction and all that, like addiction. And um, that was really hard. I mean, for me to see, like, it was just incredibly difficult because of the fact that I kept thinking that it was something I had to get rid of because I need to perfect me. That at the end of this training, there will be a me shiny, a new one, like a new me, you know, or something like that.
Well, let us say perhaps it'll be something shiny and new,
Yeah.
but it won't be you.
Yeah, 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 like that. Like, because I told my friend the other day, I was like, if someone asked me who I was back then, I would have told them myself, like me and this. But now I would just tell them like I'm an anthology. I'm like sort of an anthology of things. Like they're not really who I am, but you know, you see that that's the outer experience or something, kind
Or
of the component.
perhaps the word that often comes to mind is process.
Yeah. Mm,
And sometimes an anthology book is put together as a process so that each short story becomes another step in the process.
mhm.
And so that's a way of looking at it. It's all a process. This is what is meant by the Pali word idiopapajayata, which means with this there is that, without this you don't have that, or basically the cause effect. And if you see the basic cause effect going on each step of the process, you can see that this causes that, this causes that, this causes that, this causes that. So um, there is a statement in general systems theory, which is quite scientific, got a lot of math to it. But one of the premises of general systems theory um, is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Okay.
Now,
Oh,
now this was a concept that the Buddha didn't have in the Buddha's day. This was not a well-known concept. It's much more modern. But think of it like this: the sum total of all of the automobile parts put together in the form of an automobile gives something more than the actual sum of the parts. What is it? Transportation.
okay.
Okay, but transportation is not easily seen until you understand how to look.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you
Right.
mean.
So the outcome, or the when the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, the sum is often nebulous. But in a way, for the car, it's the whole point of putting all of those parts together for the car. The
Yeah.
intended outcome was transportation. We can
Okay.
also see that the process of your life, or in fact the ingredients, like the car parts, the ingredient of the mind, the body, the feelings, perception, all of your memories, and all of that are the constituent components. And there's no self there anywhere. But when you put all of that stuff together and you've got a functioning entity, that is what arises the self. Except that the self is much more like transportation. You can't put it in a box.
Yeah.
You can't bury it or cremate it.
No. No way.
Okay, so this is what we mean in a way of yes, there does a self exist, but really it doesn't. It
Yeah.
exists the way that the transportation works, the way for the car. In other words, it's the sum total or the outcome. And I understand the dilemma that kids get into when this is not explained to them properly, and so they think, I am the and fill in the blank. Okay, so if it's let us say an event or or an expression of bad behavior, then the kid will say, "I am this bad behavior, therefore I am bad."
Yeah.
And we make the same mistake when we say, "I am angry."
Yeah.
No, you're not angry, but
Yeah.
anger is there, but
Mm.
it's not you who is angry.
Yeah.
That in a way you are being merely controlled by the anger, like the anger and whatever the nebulous you is, the transportation, and now the anger has got you so connected together, you are the anger. But with anapanasati, we say, wait a minute, I am not the anger, and we disassociate ourselves. Aha, I see you, anger. But now the one who is saying, aha, I see you, is now a different self than the one who was caught in the anger. Now the anger is just anger, and the self is disassociated, separated, not there. So in this way, the self changed completely, even though the anger hadn't gone away.
Or would you say like the point of view? Like kind of.
Precisely.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're getting at it. Okay. In a way, you could say the self is merely a stuck point of view.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say about aversion. That when you like at my work, whenever I have wanted to leave, it becomes I. Like that's the most time you will ever hear yourself say I when you want to get out of something. Like they're like judging yourself, judging this, judging that. Get me out.
Yes, I've heard that before. Ay, 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 ay.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. I never thought about that. Yeah. Ay. I'm
Ay, ay.
Spanish. So
Mm-hmm.
I heard that all the time.
Yes. So that's referencing a self that our culture and the people in the culture believe and then pass down to the children. Sometimes we make a very, very big point of it. It's not just a self, it becomes a soul, and the soul is everlasting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's depression. Depression is that. Oh, I'm never gonna be better. I'm never gonna be better. That's
Hmm.
depression.
And the right kind of thing to do is to wake up and see that what you just said is merely just a thought. I'll never get over it. And then you say, wait a minute, that's just a hindrance.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed lately. That more and more, more and more. The hindrances like, oh, okay, okay, move out of my way, please. I don't need this. This isn't like this isn't appropriate. Or you could like, like you say, it's not appropriate for this. It doesn't make any sense to feel this way.
Hmm. And yet we feel this way out of habit.
Yeah, and I've noticed that, but it can become, it's like when to the point where it's starting to affect the body, is that's when I think all of us start to say, oh my God, wait, I need to get rid of this sensation, this extreme uncomfortableness in my skin, basically. That's
Hmm.
how it feels.
Oh, there's so much language that points to feelings like that. One of them would be, oh, he makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
Okay, what
Yeah.
does that mean? That means I'm afraid of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when fear comes, the hairs on the arm will stand up just like in cold.
Yeah. 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 And that's another thing that I've noticed too. It just, I'm sorry, but like,
Mm,
is when the hindrance, the lust or the fear, it's you. I've no, that's recently, very recently, I've noticed that it's mostly because I'm afraid of it. And when I look at it, it's just the body, it's just a sensation. But I have to be there for a while for it to like relax because of the long term fear. Oh, I hate this. I hate this feeling. I need to get rid of it. Like that's how I used to, because I used to be, Christian oriented, and no, sex is like the number one
uh-huh.
horrible thing to do. Yeah.
Well, This is something that I find really remarkable. Sometimes a particular phrase will, uh, let us say, hit people with such a profound point that we can talk for hours about the point and people won't understand, but one phrase just grabs us. Okay, and such a phrase was given by Ajahn Sumedho to Ajahn Chah to the answer to a question. They were at a ceremony, the Katen ceremony, where all of the young Thai girls are dressed up to the nines and whatnot. And Ajahn Chah asked Ajahn Sumedho, "What do you think?" And Ajahn Sumedho said this brilliantly. He knew what he was talking about. This is a direct reference to Paticca Samuppada, wisdom at the point of contact. So he was basically saying, I understand Bhikkhu Bodhidasa's teaching. But he
Okay.
said it in such a brilliant way that it really grabs people, okay? And what he said was about the girls out there. He's sitting as a monk. He'd been a monk about 10 years or whatever, and his teacher is putting him on the spot.
Yeah.
And Ajahn Sumedho says, I like it. Don't want it.
Yeah. Yep.
Think about that for yourself. You in Christianity, they're saying you like it and you should not like it. Because if you like it, you'll want it, and if you want it, you'll go get it, and then you're going to cause all kinds of troubles. Bad boy. Okay?
Yeah.
That's
And
their
oh,
storyline.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
It's a bad way to live.
Okay? You like it, therefore you want it. If you want it, you're going to go do something about it, and when you do, you're going to screw stuff up, and if you do, you're a bad boy. Okay? So this is the whole 9 yards that they're teaching. And Achan Sumedho cuts that in half, just slices right through it. I like it, but I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hardest part to see though when you're attracted, when you're being
When
pulled in
you
by your
see
mind.
that beautiful girl, the first thing that I look at is I wonder how much it cost all of that makeup she's wearing and how long did it take her to put all of that on.
And I was going to ask you about a suba as well. And in that regard, is what's the appropriate way to apply the mind to an object like a form or like something that you've seen so long as a sexual object, basically, that you were learned and trained to see it that way.
Well, you can like it
Okay.
and
Which,
recognize that you like it.
yeah, and that's the hardest part because that's the part that you're like, that's the part of the self that I was taught to not like
Mm-hmm.
who do not like, because even thinking about it makes me think like, wow, that's kind of sucks that I kind of just
Well,
don't allow myself to
uh-huh.
be at that.
But here we're actually not denying reality. We're
Yeah, and that's
actually
true.
understanding it. You see, the outcome may be the same, but the Christian's in bad feelings because he hates himself for wanting it. I hate myself for loving you. I've heard that song before.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
But within the teaching of Paticca Samuppada, no, the wisdom needs to be applied at that point of contact so that we know that we like it. And let that be. But now with wisdom, we can recognize if I pursue this, it's going to wind up in problems. It's
Okay.
probably not worth pursuing. And so now again, we're using wisdom. We recognize that I do like it, and that's okay. It
Okay.
really is okay for a father to see his daughter sexually.
Okay.
Just know that he's doing that. But you see, what will happen is that they hate those kind of thoughts. They say, "Oh, I can't do that," but he
Yeah.
still thinks about it and thinks about it. And the next thing you know, he's off into starting molestation,
Yeah, it's that obsession with regards to something that
and he
doesn't
hates
exist.
himself
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah.
And yet
Yeah.
he feels driven by it. But if he would acknowledge, I like it,
Okay.
but I'm not going to act upon it because I don't want it.
See, I can do that. But you see, in modern society now we have phones and things that pretend to act like they don't have an effect, but they do. Like it seems as oh, it's on a phone. Oh, I can I can see a woman on a phone, or whatever, it is, or whatever, killing. I mean, there's so much horrible things on the internet, and you can go and make an excuse as to your mind. And I see that. I mean, it takes mindfulness and practice, and then you see it. But when because the most messed up part, like the deception is the justification of like, oh, it's okay. Just a little bit is fine. Just a little bit of unwholesomeness.
But yes, it is. And number one, we're not sure that it's unwholesome yet because it's instinctual.
The feeling isn't, but like the act that we do, like the unhealthy
Well, I'm talking
actions
about
that
the attraction or the liking
okay, yeah, yeah.
is
That's okay.
instinctual.
Hmm. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. And it's okay.
Hmm.
All right. It's like this also. We can use fear as a different example. Humans have had fear since long before they were humans. If the animals way back then had no fear, they wouldn't have survived. They would have walked into dangerous places not recognizing the fear, and they would have gotten killed. So
Yeah.
fear has kept our species alive, and it will continue to keep us alive. A very easy and clear example of that is MAD, mutual assured destruction.
I feel like I've heard of that before.
Well, of course you have. That's the whole nuclear deterrent. That's the
Yeah,
whole
yes.
point
Okay.
about nuclear is that nobody's going to set one off on another country because they know what kind of retaliation they're going to get.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's fear that keeps us out of war. Normally, because of the fears, the way that they are, fears cause war. Oh, he's dangerous. Let's go take care of him before he sneaks in here and takes care of us.
And that's a good thing,
But
right?
now,
Like
well,
that it would
uh,
protect us all from nuclear disaster.
well, except that normally the fears are ignorant.
Yeah, yes, I agree. Like
Okay,
it's
that
out
we
of
don't
greed.
go check out to make sure he's dangerous. That's
Okay.
what the powwow is all about. We need a powwow to figure out if we can do this without becoming enemies and fighting with each other.
Yeah, that would be nice.
All right. And so that's where mutual assured destruction or nuclear energy comes in. I cannot attack him because I can't just attack him and beat him. They will retaliate, and they will retaliate even after I destroy city after city. They'll still have enough of that stuff left that they're going to destroy this city too.
Yeah.
That's what they mean by mutually assured destruction. And that kind of fear then has basically, that with the European Union has brought about a much better peace than we used to have more than 70 years ago. All right. But getting back to the point about instincts, the fear instinct has kept the human race alive.
Okay.
And mutually assured destruction is just one of the examples that the human species would have continued into their path of mutual destruction, except for the fact that, wait a minute, they can destroy us back. The fear element. Unless you understand this quality of fear as a good thing, we'll never be able to deal with it. In other words, there will always be room for fear, even in fearlessness.
Yeah.
Because now, in the state of fearlessness, we use wisdom to see what's dangerous, not a gut reaction.
Yeah, like common sense. Don't go into a
Common
bear. Don't. Yeah.
sense, wisdom to look at what's going on
Yeah.
because we can manage it with wisdom better. Okay, so if we can work with fear at that instinctual level, then we can work with the procreation instinct at that same level. In fact, we can go through all the instincts. The procreation instinct, if we didn't have it, the human race would have not, there would have been one or maybe two humans, and that's it.
Yeah.
No. The preservation of the species requires us for that procreation.
Yeah.
Also, the nesting instinct. If we were not at the gut level feeling of fear, then we would have not been able to develop the nest. And another word for the nest is the herd. And you can understand basically the nesting instinct through herd. The example, oh, this is my favorite, the sheep herd
Mm.
together because of the sheepdog. And he's out there barking, and he runs over here and barks, and he'll go this way, and then he runs over here and barks, and he'll go that way, and he'll get in a tight little thing, and the dog will maneuver the sheep towards the gate so that you can get them into the other pasture. That's the whole point of this. And the sheep will do that all in a tight herd. None of the old sheep and none of the billy goats and the big billy goat gruffs are having a conversation. They should have, if they were smart, they would say, hey, you know, that dog's not as big as you are, and he's not as big as I am. Why don't we go gang up on that dog? If we keep that dog surrounded by three or four good sheep, the whole rest of the herd don't have to do anything he's telling us to do. But until
Yeah.
we can run him. In fact, this is the whole show that happened with Mary Shelley's book, Frankenstein. At the end of the book, everyone was terrified and petrified of the monster until one guy stood up and says, we can take him. And then the mob changed their fear into revenge.
Okay.
All right. But that takes a bit of wisdom to recognize that we do not have to herd together. We do not have to cower in a group. That
Yeah.
this group, in fact, can go do something about it. And that's so the herding instinct. Without that herding instinct, there wouldn't have been sheep. The wildebeest would all have been cut down one at a time because they weren't in a herd. The herd keeps the nest going, and the nest is what allows the procreation. The last one is territory, the territorial instinct. That if nobody knows the territories of others, then it's going to be dangerous. That's the whole problem that's come into the Western mostly mentality of the territorial instinct goes to the point that it's no longer a physical boundary. With dogs, it always is. In other words, the dogs know their boundary is at the edge of the road. Outside the edge of the road is not their territory. Their territory is the yard. With humans, we don't have that. We've modified that instinct to where it's not that other place, it's that other people.
Okay.
Giving rise to
Yeah.
tribalism, racism, and in fact, if you look at that herding instinct, this herd herds together, and that herd over there herds together.
Yeah. Separate little herds,
And they're
states.
separated into this little herds or little states, and that they are afraid of each other.
Yeah.
Okay? So basically, back around to the fear. We have fear as the base, and so we collect together and have a herding instinct or a nesting instinct because of fear, and we have the territorial instinct because of fear. And also, looking at it strictly from sexuality, the birth of the baby is a very dangerous time
For the mother or
for the
for the baby?
mother, for
Or
the
for the baby.
baby, for the family, for everybody.
Okay.
Very dangerous time in the old days. Now that we have modern science, I mean, we've taken care of so many issues, but the instincts are
Yeah.
still there. And so you have the old man, the old guard saying, you guys better be careful. Don't go messing around. You got to be ready to have a baby.
Yeah. Like it's like this
Look how that's
ingrained
just gone
thing.
south. The whole idea is wisdom starts it off. Be careful, has now into you're a bad person because you feel an instinctual feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, or and also if and then the other thing is like if you don't obsessively indulge in that instinctual feeling, then you're not normal. So
Well,
it's like
let us
these two
say
extremes.
there are there are so many people doing it. Does that make it normal?
No, never. I think I've
Well,
learned that later. Yeah,
you've learned that lately, but before the idea was is that when everybody's doing it, it must be normal, good, correct, and okay.
yeah,
The
yeah. Oh,
example is
yeah.
50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong.
Yeah, like this idea, like a lot of suffering in my life came from the idea that I needed rules. I needed a map for my life. And if I didn't have a map, then I had no meaning. I
Hmm.
had no And that is true. And that's great because I hate
Now
purpose.
we recognize, hey, wait a minute, it's not a tragedy, that's a marvel.
Yeah, it is. And it's just that when you preach so many times, God has a purpose for your life. God has a purpose. There needs to be a
Except
literal,
for one thing,
definite thing.
it's not God who has a purpose in your life, it's the church and the guys who are telling you that.
Yeah, and
And they're the God.
yeah, that's an existential thing that people get into in church because I went through it. A lot of people go through it. Um, a lot of people either go to the complete south and end up, like it can go bad and then, or it can go become awesome. You can discover who you are, who you really were, your own rules, your own way, the own way of making your life better.
But if you do that, though, a lot you will find at least a number of the hierarchy will come to you and say, "You're not doing God's purpose. You're doing your own thing, and
Yep.
that we want you to do what we want you to do. And if you do, then we will say you're doing God's purpose
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
doing ours."
Yeah, because I remember I left because I saw a better version of God and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go back to Buddhism because ultimately that's the most easiest way to go and without all the complicated ideologies. And I remember I told someone I was like, well, I remember Ram Dass or people like you, right? Or anyone like they would say you're wrong just because you think a certain way and that you're going to eternal damnation just because you think a certain way. And I remember thinking like how can someone like as kind as you or as any person that is genuinely kind go to hell? It just doesn't make sense. Like that even then, even bad people, what about them? Like because everything is mixed like you said before. Everything is mixed so it becomes a thin line, it just disappears. Like the duality of that horrible system that created all that. But sorry, I just really love that because I went through that phase, but it's more like the integrating is the thing I'm missing, which is like my physical experience as a person and not an idea that I need to become. And that's where the dissociation for me comes, where it's like the actual my life, the real one, and then the one that was supposed to be lived out by these structures.
The
And
one that
that
you were told to do.
exactly, yeah. And that
In
dissociation.
Buddhism, they have a ceremony for children. This ceremony is done at the Wat on every Buddha day, about once a week. And in the Western Buddhist Wats, they go on Sunday because of the calendar of the Westerners. And every Sunday, they will do this. It's called the Triple Gem and the Precepts. Basically, what they're doing is they're reading out loud, the monks are chanting out loud in a foreign language, but everybody is supposed to know the Riot Act.
The riot act. What does that mean?
Yeah, the Buddhist Riot Act. Panatipata we ramane sakabadam samatayame tena dana we ramane sakabadam samatayame kame some chatara we ramane sakabadam samatayame, and you mean it too. Most of water, way Ramane Sakavadam Samatiyame.
The precepts.
The precepts, exactly. And that they're handed down to children as a set of laws, a set of rules. Well, you can see that the Christians do the same thing to their kids. They just don't do it in ceremony, but they do it with the same kind of gusto.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, and that in the concept of Buddhism, the precepts are given to the kids because the kids themselves don't have the wisdom to see how to stay out of trouble. So they're given that information in advance. Here's a set of rules or guidelines because you're not smart enough to see things for yourself.
yeah, yeah,
All right. Well, that's what the Ten Commandments were.
yeah. And that's not true.
Is to set down a set of rules for people to follow because they're not smart enough to figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wait a minute. Wait just a cotton picking here. So you're saying that nobody knew that killing was wrong until Moses came down off the hill with tablets? Why did he get sent to the wilderness? Because he had killed somebody. You know, that's the
yeah,
whole point.
yeah.
Is that the rules have been known to humanity since long before because of human wisdom.
You want to know an interesting fun fact before you, like just a quick little fun fact? Even in the Bible, God says to the people of Israel, He says, "Why do you want a king when I am speaking to you within your heart?"
Hmm.
It's like in that inner wisdom, that panya, that already innate play, like there is already. But they wanted rules because they couldn't really think for themselves, even though they already had that innate capability
Hmm.
to, you know.
Actually, there's a whole lot of stuff that was wrapped up in that I want a king, in the sense that if we got a king, we're no longer just a tribe. We're something important. Also,
Yeah,
if we got a king, he'll have an army and he'll protect us from those guys over there who's got a king.
yeah.
Okay. So basically what we're saying is that we're giving up our freedom for safety.
Oh, that's a wow. I never thought about. I usually people put it in reverse. That's interesting. I never thought about it that way. That it's like we give up, like you know what I mean? They usually put it like YOLO. Have you ever heard of that term, YOLO?
YOLO, tell me about it.
Like in order, you only live once, so literally do whatever you wish, but in the sense of like no thinking about it, just do until you end up in a brothel somewhere. It's like, or dead or drunk in somewhere, like in that sense, in that attitude.
Let us say that that sounds the way you're talking about it, like something that an old wise man said to a kid, and by the time he got home, the kid had turned what the wise man said into that.
Party into a party theme song or something.
Hmm. Right. Then, in fact, there's nothing wrong with a party. Let's
Yeah,
have a party. In fact, I think that the world would be a better place if Wall Street would have more parties,
yeah, yeah.
like one every day that lasted several hours.
They could, right? Yeah, they
Yeah.
did actually. They have.
Well, the whole idea then is that if you have a party, then it must be stupid because
Yeah,
wise people don't party.
yeah.
That
That's the idea. That's the
yeah,
culture.
uh-huh. That's our culture that we have, which is basically um, from the perspective of I'm miserable, therefore you must be miserable too. And that
Yeah,
whole package gets passed down generation by generation by generation. And it's with the Buddha Dhamma that we can wake up to say, wait a minute, that's just attachments to the way things should be, that I was told that they should be that way. And that things are, in fact, not really like that. So
yeah,
if they're not really like that, and they're not really like that for anyone, and everyone that I know is trying to make things like that, and they wind up being miserable failures at it, maybe it's time for us to stop trying to do it. to make things like we've been told that they ought to be, and be more satisfied with the way things are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really weird. And it's funny because that is considered in like if it's really in strange because if you're happy, that's considered an issue. If you change, that's considered an issue. Like in this society, you're meant to be who you are, but you're not. You literally can, as you grow older, you see that you literally don't want to be anyone. You want to be at ease. Like you want to like just paint or something. I don't know. Go somewhere else. Do something you like.
Now, there's kind of a difference between the Thai culture and the Western culture in that way. With Thai culture, everyone is born into a large extended family and into a situation with the idea that each child must learn to fit into their family and their situation and be happy with their life. That's the whole point. In the West, it's completely different than that. In the West, they say, okay, you've been born in original sin, you're miserable. Now you have to work your way out of it, and you have to do what you're told to do. And if you do the work, you will get a reward for it, which is actually the law of karma. Do something good now, and later you're going to get a reward for it.
Yeah.
And everybody winds up being disappointed because the rewards are magical, and so is the good in the good behavior.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, really? That's interesting to think about because a lot of us take pride in that. We take pride in our good be as if you we hide in our good behavior.
Mm-hmm. So that gives us then the story of Adam and Eve.
Okay. I see.
They're in paradise.
Yeah, yeah,
And at the end of the story, they're thrown out of paradise. Guess what? Every child is born in paradise.
yeah.
And by eating of the fruit of good and bad, every child winds up throwing their own self out of paradise.
Mm,
Why?
yeah,
Because we're taught to judge this paradise as this is good and that's bad. And in fact, really where the good and bad comes from is not from wisdom, it comes from feelings. And that's why there's so many mistakes with it. Basically, it goes like this: I like it, therefore I want it, therefore it must be good.
that's kind of like when people start our ancestors when they taste things,
Mm-hmm.
tasted things when they tasted fruits and such.
That's possibly how the humans got that way. Is we went around because we were nomadic from deep roots, and that meant that we were going around and finding different flora and fauna,
Yeah,
and that
okay.
we had to experiment our way through it. Is the food that we find here going to poison us, or is it going to be good for us?
Yeah, that must have been a journey.
All right, so now we understand about taste that if it tastes bad, we throw it out. We know what sour is. We know what food going off is. We know what bad meat tastes like. And so we'll throw that stuff out. Bitter things, we throw them out. But the things that taste sweet, we like that. Things like fat. So we have been, let us say, programmed at the DNA level to like the things that the body needs that it's in short supply of. Fast
Yeah.
forward 100,000 years to present time, and guess what? Now we have an abundance of those things that used to be scarce that we needed.
Hmm.
And now we tend to overindulge in those things that we like because they're readily available. An example of that is sugar. 500 years ago, sugar was such a rarity that only the royalty would have it.
Wow, wow, I didn't know that. That's cool. I mean, that's cool to history fact.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Now people are dying from it.
Right, that the sugar industry, in fact, that was the whole issue about the South southern United States around Alabama and that area versus Cuba.
Hmm.
Why?
What
Who
was
is
the difference?
going to supply the sugar to Europe?
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Hmm. The slaves in the southern U.S. or the slaves on the Cuban island? Who's going to supply the sugar?
Mm.
And so, um, the thing that means that if it used to be rare and valuable to the body, then the human developed the feeling of liking for that. So
Yeah.
even our feelings are based upon old wisdom.
Yeah. Very old.
But
Okay.
very old wisdom. And that old wisdom doesn't work when things change, like the availability.
Of what? Like of any pleasure, of sensual pleasure.
Anything that we like. And that's exactly what's happened with pornography.
Yeah.
Used to, the young boy would be very attracted to that girl.
Yeah, it
And
was normal. It was innocent at first, you
mhm,
know. It's always
not,
innocent.
not just innocent, it kept the species alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now it's readily available, not the real thing, but the internet version of it.
Yeah.
And so we go after the internet porn when in fact it's a natural thing. And the Christians are screaming at the top of their lungs, "You're going to go to hell because you're doing something that I didn't get to do."
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's that feeling of putting all your crap on other people.
Hmm.
There's no reason for that.
Well, that's basically what the whole idea of power is. If I can be powerful enough to control your behavior, then I can feel safe around you. But if I cannot control you, then you may come and stab me in the back.
Yeah, yeah. Like Greek kings thought that way. A lot of Greece and Rome.
Ah, exactly so. But you see that they're just living out normal human behavior, but they
Yeah,
got recorded. But that's how we all are, that in fact, that territorial instinct makes us afraid of people who could be our friends. This
okay.
is why the Buddha had told Ananda that friendship is the whole of the Dhamma. Why? Because in order to be friends with someone, you've got to put down your negative feelings. You've got to set aside your anxiety.
Yeah.
You've got to set aside your competition.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, if you can understand, basically, then what that means is we need to make friends with our own instincts.
I've always heard this concept, but I really never understood it because of I never had the tools, and now I do.
Hmm.
It's like the attitude of aversion towards that instinct, the aversion,
Right.
the hindrance, really. Yeah.
Is when there's aversion for it is a hindrance. When you see it clearly for what it is, that's wisdom.
And so when we see it clearly and see, okay, oh, that's not myself, that means, well, since it's not myself, why don't I just feel good
Hmm.
instead?
Instead, exactly.
And rather choose that world instead of that one, the other one that I'm living in my head.
Every mind moment, every instant in time, we have a choice.
And
If
that's the
we're
hard
awake,
part. And
if
yeah, if we're awake, and there's a certain point where that line awake and asleep, like I can get kind of so far into the sleepiness, like the dullness, and
there
I feel like
really is a gray area.
yeah, like that justification, that delusion, the delusion. That's perfect word for it, a delusion. Like, oh, it's okay, you're not gonna get hurt this time. Nothing's gonna happen. It's okay. We won't die or anything, or we won't.
Mhm.
Like, you don't know. It's like a certainty. You give yourself this certainty. I guess
Mhm.
that's how I would put it. And then you feel extremely bad afterwards, and you despair for a while, and then you
Well,
get
the
up
reason
again.
that they go into that, though, is because they had that certainty
Yeah,
that
and
was built upon sand. It wasn't built upon real investigation. It was built upon the delusion, and so they tripped. They weren't watching where they were going, or they decided that, oh, I can do that,
Yeah. And I
but
knew I
they're not
break.
really prepared, so they hurt themselves.
Yeah, and I knew from you, I figured out that I broke the addiction when I thought always that when break the addiction, I'll feel something, or it was always magical thinking, like, oh, this addiction is a demon and it's its own entity. So, but then I realized, like, oh, my personality view and all that, little by little, I was like, the addiction disappeared because of the fact that I was just like, that's not who I am. Literally, like I saw that. That's not who I am. It was really weird because usually I try to fight within the context of the addiction, like within it. Like, oh, I'm gonna find my way out of prison in this cage by looking at the wall or something. I
Okay,
like, yeah,
I understand what you're saying. Yes.
yeah,
One of the things that's worth pointing out is that the word addiction has a really bad connotation. It's almost like a dirty word.
yeah.
And the word that's a little bit softer but has that same connotation is the word attachment, especially in Buddhist circles.
Hmm.
And yet, the Buddha himself was very specific that there are four modes of clinging. Only four.
Yeah,
If what we're doing is one of these four modes of clinging, then we will wind up in the woeful state. We will be reborn into the state that we're clinging to. But attachments in general can be healthy if we're attached to the right thing. An example of that is that if I've seen this all the time. They have in Thailand they have a pickup truck system that they have a bench on both sides. So it's called a song tower or a two bencher, and they almost always have a covering over it.
okay.
And then in the back of the pickup, the Thais can really crowd in. I have seen them so laden down that like 30 people in the back of a pickup. Many of them
Man,
hanging right off the side, but it doesn't matter which place you are. It matters that if you're going to sit there, you need to position yourself or attach yourself to that truck because it's moving around. A way to talk about it is you have to have sea legs. For instance, you're sitting in the back of the truck all by yourself and the truck takes off. Naturally, you're going to fall over this way. So you
yeah.
need to put your arm down and brace yourself.
Mm.
If the truck then comes to a stop and comes this way and I'm sitting, I need to put this arm down on this side of the bench to brace myself because of the changes of acceleration. On the
Mm.
back of this truck, there may not be room to get into the truck, but there's room to stand on the bumper and hold on to the piece of metal that's part of the awning.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, and hang on. Okay, so basically, this whole idea of attachment, another quality of it is to be able to hang in there, to hang on, to attach ourselves to the things that are appropriate and worthwhile attaching to, and do not attach to the things that are unwholesome.
Yeah, and this is where enduring comes in with a good attitude, of course, not just like, oh, I'm here, just
Well, the good attitude is
yeah,
something to attach to.
yeah, okay. Yeah, because it
This
makes it
present
easier.
moment,
Makes
this
it way
present
easier.
moment is worth attaching to.
Yeah.
Attaching ourselves to the past, not so useful.
Yeah, and then it's kind of like, I guess, that feeling of the uncomfortable when the lust comes up, or whatever a better name for it is, the sexual instinct, let's call it an instinct, where
Hmm.
it's like it comes up and the physical, like I can deal with it when I'm just seeing it, but when the emotions, the sang, the not sang, the thought forms, like,
Hmm.
oh, like some of them are just so like you kind of lose it, like you lose kind of the context, and then you start like, no, I can do it, relax, don't follow, no, like, and then no, wait, come back. It's kind of like a whoa, whoa, whoa. There's no attaching. It's just, oh, okay, there we go, I got it. I got what you're
Okay.
saying now. Yeah, I get it
Mhm.
now. You kind of like answered my own point there. Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Well, one of the things that they will say about that girl, whoever, they will say, she takes my breath away.
yeah.
All right. Well, the obvious advice now is, well, take a deep breath.
Ah, that's good. That's funny and good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
Just take a deep breath, okay? That even though she takes your breath away in the sense that you like it so much.
that it's starting to fit, literally take my shallow breathing and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, to come back to be here now is to recognize, yes, I do like it.
Okay. Yes, I do.
We
Yeah,
have to recognize it. Yes, I do like this.
that
It
is very
really
true.
is natural.
Yeah, yeah. The feeling
Okay,
in itself.
even for a father to have not have sexual feelings because that's
Yeah.
too late. He's got those sexual feelings for his daughter because he's not recognized that he likes his daughter.
Yeah, the sexual feelings are more like the fantasies that you start to create in your mind, like the
Hmm.
emotions instead of just the physical body, and that's it.
And recognize that she's beautiful, and I can
Yeah,
be
it's just
happy
that.
that she's beautiful and I like it, but I
Yeah.
don't have to do anything about it. That's the beauty. I like it, but I don't want to have to do anything about it.
Mm.
And that is completely different from Christianity. Oh, you're a bad boy to like it.
Yeah, yeah, and then you feel weird. You feel dissociated, two
Hmm.
people in your head. Yeah. And that's a good, and I guess the second question, like, and I think it's a shorter answer, because I think I was good. I really like that because I think I don't want to make it into a thing where it's like, oh my God, because before I used to like dig in past trying to fix a situation, and that just doesn't. I just gonna agree. I'm just gonna follow everything you say. It's working. It's working.
That's the way of looking at it. Yes, that the Dhamma is so valuable because it works.
Yeah,
That's
it's working. It's better and it's freeing and it's not like, and really you can't fix the past. It done. There's no past. And but the second question was from the
okay.
book, and this one was, I found this interesting thing on the Namita that he was explaining when we're getting to the fine breathing and the four skillful ways we can get calmer and more present with the breath. Um, and he says you can use a neutral image, which is interesting because I've heard other monks and other meditators say it comes up out of like a magical thing, like, oh wow, Namita, it's a spiritual being or something, a white light, or Tibetans use
You're
deities or
mentioning the
something.
word nimitta.
Ah, that's how you pronounce it, Nimitta, Nimitta,
Mhm.
Nimitta. Yeah, people use things, and I'm wondering because he says use a neutral image, and I'm wondering because there's some traditions where I've been in where we used images, but they invoked emotion, and that's not that he's saying something else. This is
Mhm.
different.
Well,
And is it
this is
useful?
also a very advanced.
Okay. Okay.
Is this? I know the book says for serious beginners,
Yeah.
but basically the counterpart sign comes and has been added to the teachings of the Buddha, but it came from the time before the Buddha when the meditations, you see, were external. Everything was external, and everything with the teaching of the Buddha is to turn everything external into the internal.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to take off my headphones because the battery's getting really low, and I'm going to be
Okay.
able to hear you and everything.
Okay. Okay. So in the meditations before the time of the Buddha, they had the same four kind of meditations that we have in the Satipatthana. There was earth meditations, there was fire meditations, there were water meditations, and there were sky meditations or air meditations. The air and sky meditations gave us eventually astronomy, astrology, and meteorology. fire meditations are actually the easiest ones because the fire just tends to take one right into it. So candle gazing or sitting around a campfire, people will just naturally gravitate into watching the fire. I remember it many times in my past. You could see that. Um, the water or crystal meditations have to do then with focusing and taking the mind into the water. Kasina meditations is the one, or the earth meditation. They would take either a stitched together group of leaves or a mud pie that is about a foot in diameter. And over time, the monk will sit there and watch that mud pie and then close his eyes and try to mentally reconstruct it in as much detail as he can.
Yeah.
And then he opens his eyes again and evaluates what he remembers and what he sees now so that over time he can refine the image so that he can get a very, very clear image of what he's looking at after he closes his eye.
Yeah, this is really old. Wow. Like that's older than the Tantra stuff too, right?
Okay, right. This is an old, old practice that predated the Buddha.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, so this image of that mud pie was what is called the imita, the mental image that we make of something. In fact, we make nimitas almost all the time on a regular basis. The human mind is using nimitas, but they float in and out. They don't stay.
Yeah, yeah, daydreaming, right?
Hmm.
Or just fantasies and things like that.
Exactly.
Fun
They don't.
and so
They don't. So what we're talking about with the nimitta is that we're going to get a kind of a steady image so that we can quieten the mind. And there's a number of ways that that can do that. The technique that I have started long ago to use from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was a nimitta that was not associated with the nose tip, but it was associated with the long, relaxing, deep out breath that when the breath goes out, the mind will stop. And it won't stop back until the in breath.
yeah, the pause, right?
Okay, you pause. And
Uh-huh.
in that pause of emptiness, you can do that at the nose tip. So you can put a nimitta there. And the sense is because when you're breathing in and out and focusing at the nose tip, you can actually experience the air moving in and moving out.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, but that is not step three of Anapanasati. Step three of Anapanasati says to investigate the whole body.
Yeah, the kaya, right? The breath, body,
The
and
breath.
how it affects the physical.
Exactly. So we're talking about the chest and where all of the feelings are. At the nose tip, you're not going to be watching the nose tip to see feelings arise.
Yeah.
This is long after the feelings have been settled. And so the
Oh,
last kind of nimitta that we have then would be this point at the nose tip.
oh, so this is kind of when does this happen over time or is this a sitting once your feelings are calm in your practice on the like once you're practicing intentionally or something like that? You know what I mean? Like on the cushion or something. And then
Um,
you kind of like your feelings of kind of chill out or sukha, then you start to do it. Or is it just later on and
or
keep
you can take sukha itself as the nimitta.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. So that is okay, I see what you mean. That object as an object.
The object of, wow, how good I feel.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and oftentimes the experience will be to place the attention in the chest area of the rising and falling of the breathing, except that we're let us say noting or noticing the lack of anxiety, the lack of tension. We're actually noticing the relaxation. And so that relaxation begins to feel really, really good. And so you're
Okay.
just focused in on one point, and it can be the center of the chest. For others, it can be the nose tip or other places like this. But because of Anapanasati step 3 in the sutta, it's better to have it in the chest area because that's still associated with the breath.
Ah, I see.
Okay, but that's also a good place to watch because that's where we're going to find sadness,
Yeah.
grief, anxiety. All of that can be felt in the general chest area here. So if we continue to watch that area, and we come to watch it in the fact that we're watching it in emptiness because
Yeah.
it's empty of anxiety, it's empty of sadness, it's empty of work to do, it's empty of everything, and therefore it is at rest.
Mm.
And
And
so
that
this,
becomes you keep on going and keep exploring that, right? Upgrading
mhm,
it, upgrading it.
that's an excellent way to talk about it. Explore, to
Mm.
investigate, to notice it, to play with it, in fact.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes we reach a plateau and then we don't know where to go from there and we think that there's
There's
something
many
else.
different kinds of plateaus.
Okay.
One of the plateaus is that the student gets to the state that he's feeling good and he really likes it, and so he says, okay, and now he doesn't have to practice sati anymore.
Yeah, I used to do like, oh, I feel great. Forget meditation. Yeah, yeah,
And then we lose our sati, and because of that, the things start coming back into the mind that we don't catch. And then now we're back into dukkha again.
mm, yeah,
Okay. And so the intermediate student has to be kept remembered that these instincts that we're dealing with is very much like a beard. You can
uh,
shave. The first time
oh,
you shave a beard, it's a lot of work, but you can get used to shaving. And
yeah,
then, but if you get used to shaving and you've gotten so shaved so well, and every time you stroke it feels so nice, you say, "Oh, I don't have to shave anymore."
yeah, yeah,
And then the beard's going to grow back on its own. That's just how things are. No, we got to come back and keep shaving and keep shaving. What we wind up doing is making great friends with the shaving and making great friends with the razor in the sense that now we're keeping a mental razor all the time. We're going around saying, okay, got that one, good to go. Then a little while later, all right, yeah, there's a little hair coming out. Let me shave that one off too. And
yeah,
so shaving becomes really, really, really easy to do.
yeah. Mm.
Okay,
It's
so
it's
this is an example of it. Though I don't know of anybody who carries a razor around, shaving every 3 to 5 minutes, just a little.
but so that's the way you would say right now I should be practicing that like Sangha with more of that, more
Right.
contemplating it and exploring.
To make sure that you're shaving the hindrances out of the mind. To
Yeah,
make
for
sure
sure.
that you continue to take that little shave.
Yeah, and it's interesting for sure. Like because I used to use imagination as a tool. But that's it's very different from that. Like in Buddhism, it's very like here. It's always here. There's no go this way, go that way. It's always working within your experience, not
Hmm.
like objectifying it or something.
And basically working with feelings.
Yeah, the what it's weird because it's it's so much more simple when you take out all of that magic, the chakras, which are all just saying the emotions. They're just feelings in different places of you.
Right. Well, you
Um,
could see that the magic
yeah,
that we have today got started in the really old days as merely concepts.
yeah,
That in fact, almost all languages are magical. That's the way that the mind works. Our concepts always bring up analogies or some. I try to give real world analogies, but oftentimes my analogies are still magical in the
yeah.
sense that the actual analogy doesn't really fit the situation at all.
And do you think that magic is preparing people for that reality of the direct experience of like that truth? That like, because so in Hinduism or in these other like even in Dhamma, like the ordinary view and then the super mundane. Like, do you think that like someone can actually use that ordinary view to lead them all the way to that place?
There's no other way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yes, we have to grow up. We have to come out of the mud,
Yeah.
and we or to come out of the mundane into the super mundane
Yeah.
by understanding feelings. That in fact, if anything is going to be, the ordinary world is the world of bad feelings, and the super mundane is the state of being able to feel good.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I really like that Nimitta, right?
Nimitta,
Yeah,
an internal representation.
yeah, because I've had those before, but spontaneously, like very very few times, but like I've had them and they freak me out, and I was like, whoa, what the heck? Like, because your mind can do some strange things when it's really
Hmm.
focused and not like it's when it's like aware but not focused. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like when you're there but you're not there, like you're not focused on what's happening.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I,
Okay. Well, I hope that answered that question about the nimitta.
both you
Because,
answered both questions perfectly.
pardon?
You answered both questions perfectly.
Okay. All righty. Well, I've got another caller waiting, so I'll let you go, Dennis. I'm really good to see you again.
Yeah, I'll see you soon again.
All right. I hope you take inspiration in what we've talked about and find that peace and joy and happiness.
Yes, it's here, right?
Exactly. All right. Well, we'll see you later. Bye bye.